What's up, Taiwan? I'm Yvonne with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan is calling for the release of a fishing boat and its 5 crew members who were taken from waters off Jinmen by the Chinese Coast Guard on Tuesday night. The detention is being seen as just the latest attempt by China to encroach on Taiwanese territory. Reese Ayers is following the story for us from Taipei. Reese, what is Taiwan's Coast Guard saying?
Well, they held a press conference just a few hours ago where they confirmed that a Taiwanese fishing vessel had been boarded and detained by China's Coast Guard at around 8 o'clock last night in the waters around Taiwan's outlying Jinmen Island. The detainment happened outside of Chinese territorial waters, but Taiwan's Coast Guard did confirm that the fishers had previously crossed into China's waters. The boat was then escorted to the Chinese port of Weitou, which is just about 10 kilometers northeast of Jinmen. Taiwan's Coast Guard tried to intercept the Chinese vessels as they were escorting the Taiwanese fishers and asked them to release them, but the Chinese side refused. The outnumbered and not wanting to cause any more conflict or escalations, Taiwan's Coast Guard kind of backed off, and the fishers were then taken to China. Also at that press conference this morning, the Taiwanese Coast Guard warned any other vessels operating in the area to proceed with caution and said that they're currently negotiating with the Chinese side for the release of those fishers and asked for things not to get political.
And Reese, how common are incidents like this in the Taiwan Strait? Is there a history of scuffles between the two sides there?
There's a long history, Yvonne. Given the proximity of some of Taiwan's outlying islands to China, incidents aren't uncommon, although detainments like this are rarer. China has seized about 17 Taiwanese fishing vessels since 2003, but just this year, a series of incidents have really increased tensions in the waters between the two countries. In February, 2 Chinese fishers drowned in Taiwanese waters after being chased by Taiwan's Coast Guard, and then in March, a Taiwanese fisher was detained by China for crossing into Chinese waters, and that fisher still remains in China. Since then, both sides have really been beefing up their maritime security, and Chinese incursions in Taiwanese waters have increased, with Taiwan's Coast Guard saying that there have been more than 500 such incidents just this year, accusing China of normalizing that kind of behavior. And with more and more vessels operating in the Taiwan Strait, it's likely that incidents like these will continue to increase.
Thanks for the details, Reese. That was Reese Ayers reporting from Taipei. We'll keep following the story. Tune in later for TaiwanPlus News for any updates. Opposition lawmakers have set up a committee to investigate a local media company. They're using newly expanded legislative powers to launch the probe. Joyson has the latest.
Here at the legislature, lawmakers from opposition parties, the KMT and TPP, are moving forward and using their controversial new powers, which are legal at this point, to investigate private entities in Taiwan. This follows months of heated debate and protests. Just last week, the presidential office, DPP lawmakers, and other officials have asked the nation's top court to decide whether these laws are constitutional or not. Now, here for their first act, KMT and TPP lawmakers are taking aim at a local media company, M News, also known as Mirror TV. They're known generally to lean more in favor with the ruling DPP. And the investigation will be looking into the outlet's license and how it was granted. They've already set up a committee which will have the power to summon people in to testify. Now, DPP lawmakers have continued to warn that no one is safe from legislative scrutiny. They say that today it could be M News and tomorrow it could be semiconductor giant TSMC. Now, as for whether these laws will stay, it's ultimately up to the court, and it's unclear when they will issue their interpretation. Now, this is the last hope for those who oppose these reforms. But as for the KMT and TPP's lawmakers, it looks like they're making use of these powers as soon as possible. Joseph Wu and Joyce Sun in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
China has started military drills in waters north of Taiwan. China's Maritime Safety Administration issued a navigation warning for the area where the exercises are being held. They will run through Friday. No further information has been released. At their closest point, the exercise area is just 18 kilometers from Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone. This area is not part of Taiwan's sovereign territory, but is used by its military for defensive purposes. The economy minister is facing questions from lawmakers after 2 fresh blackouts. As John Van Trieste reports, his answers could signal an about-face on Taiwan's nuclear energy policy.
Yet another blackout. Nearly 5,000 homes in the northern city of Taoyuan lost power Tuesday morning. A squirrel touched a power line, and that was it. It's the latest in a string of outages in recent months that's frustrating residents. And that wasn't the only blackout of the day. Around noon, a malfunctioning fuse box cut power to over 1,000 homes in Tainan down south. These blackouts come 2 weeks after a crucial tech zone in Taipei lost power, shutting down work and raising questions over how realistic Taiwan's goal of becoming an AI hub really is. It's not just residents losing patience. On Tuesday, lawmakers had questions for Economy Minister J.W. Guo. He says there are problems like old equipment and growing a population density in some areas that strained the grid. But he says the blackout situation isn't as bad as it may seem. Then came something of a surprise. For years, the ruling Democratic Progressive Party has promised to phase out nuclear power by 2025. But Guo now says it won't put up a fight if the opposition-controlled legislature votes to keep reactors online, including a reactor whose fate may be decided in a vote next week. Some analysts see this as evidence of a split on the issue within the Democratic Progressive Party and a sign of uncertainty about what's to come.
I think you can separate between the pro-business people that President Lai has elevated within his administration and who are generally pro-nuclear, and what I would characterize as the DPP old guard, such as the vice premier and the premier. I think they're still really attached to the no nuclear homeland idea.
From human error to faulty equipment to squirrels, Taiwan's recent power cuts have many causes. But in the background are worries about supplying Taiwan's tech and industry sectors. There's anxiety over dependence on imported fossil fuels. And there's debate over where nuclear power should fit into the energy mix. Just over a month into the job, the new cabinet faces a serious question with no clear answer: how to power Taiwan. Klein Wong and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
A stampede at a religious event in northern India has killed more than 100 people. Rosie Greninger reports.
A catastrophic end to a religious event in northern India. At least 121 people, mostly women and children, were killed and more than 150 injured when a crowd of thousands surged forward and turned into a stampede in Uttar Pradesh.
सत्संग हुआ था, फिर खत्म हो गया. खत्म होने के बाद सब लोग भाग छूटे भाग छूटे तो माँ आगे नालों सड़क ऊंची नालों से तो गांव में गिरे एक ते ऊपर एक ते ऊपर एक ते ऊपर एक जो दबे गए जो खत्म हो गए फिर दो लोग वागन ने खींचे पकड़ के नहीं.
The state's chief officer said those gathered who were celebrating the Hindu deity Shiva were attempting to reach the event stage to touch the preacher, while police say overcrowding may have been a factor. More than 250,000 people were reportedly attending the event, 3 times the number that was permitted. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has offered support to those impacted by the tragedy and pledged $2,400 to relatives of the dead.
मैं सभी घायलों के जल्द से जल्द राज्य सरकार की देखरेख में प्रशासन राहत और बचाव कार्य में जुटा हुआ है. केंद्र सरकार के वरिष्ठ उत्तर प्रदेश सरकार के लगातार संपर्क में है. मैं इस सदन के माध्यम से सभी को ये भरोसा देता हूं कि पीड़ितों की हर तरह से मदद की जाएगी।
Police are investigating the incident and have vowed to act against anyone responsible. Stampedes have been common at religious festivals in India, mostly blamed on poor crowd management. And as relatives of those injured in this latest incident wait for news of their loved ones, there are renewed calls for government officials to take safety protocols more seriously. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Chinese and Philippine officials have met in Manila to try to ease tensions in the South China Sea. The meeting comes just weeks after the most serious confrontation in the disputed waters between the two sides triggered fears the U.S. could get involved. While the day-long meeting has not resulted in an agreement, a statement from the Philippine Foreign Affairs Department says both sides affirmed their commitment to de-escalate tensions. Apart from China and the Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, Taiwan, and Brunei have overlapping claims to the strategic sea. More than 1 million people have signed an online petition calling for South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol to be impeached. The petition has been up for 10 days and says President Yoon is unfit for the job. The National Assembly's petition website has been inaccessible for much of the time because of the large numbers of people trying to access it. South Korea's presidential office has responded saying it's not possible to impeach a president without clear legal violations. For more on the impeachment push, Louis Watt spoke to John Lee, editor of Korea Pro, an online platform that analyzes South Korea's politics.
How unusual is it to have such a call for the president's impeachment in South Korea?
It is not at all unusual. South Korea successfully impeached its president in 2017, and that was when Park Geun-hye was president. But after she was impeached, suddenly the South Korean public got a taste of removing leaders that are unpopular. And so after Park Geun-hye was impeached and she was succeeded by the next president, Moon Jae-in, there were many online petitions calling for his impeachment as well. But of course, he wasn't impeached. And now with the current president, he is also unpopular. But these these petitions calling for presidential impeachment, they're not sufficient to lead to actual impeachment, of course. There has to be actual crimes, irrefutable evidence of crimes having been committed for impeachment to be a thing.
Why is President Yoon so unpopular at this point in time?
President Yoon is very unpopular. He's not the most unpopular South Korean president in the country's history, but he is unpopular. According to the latest Gallup Korea poll, his popularity rating is about 26 or 25%, and there are many reasons as to why he's unpopular. People have been complaining about his foreign policy, particularly toward Japan and North Korea. Now, we have to remember when Moon Jae-in was president, he was mostly dealing with the Trump presidency. And Donald Trump was quite certain that if he met with Kim Jong-un, this entire North Korean crisis would be resolved immediately. And this fit very nicely with President Moon's foreign policy. President Moon wanted to pursue a policy of détente and reducing risks on the Korean Peninsula. Yoon decided to go with a hardline approach, saying that Moon's approach was essentially a fake peace. President Yoon focused more on building, or shall we say, repairing relations with the U.S. and with Japan. And so because of those of his moves, there have been a lot of trilateral military cooperation and training that has been going on in the area. And so North Korea is responding quite harshly to Yoon's approach.
Is it clear who set up this online petition?
Well, these online petitions can be set up anonymously by different people. As long as they have a phone number and an ID that they can use, they can set up these online petitions. And so it doesn't really matter who set up this petition. What matters is that 800,000 people actually sign on to it. And we have to remember that 800,000 is a drop in the bucket compared to 50 million people who reside in South Korea.
That was John Lee, editor of Korea Pro, talking to our reporter, Louis Watt. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, take a look at people in Nepal celebrating its National Paddy Day, marking the start of the rice planting season. I'm Yvonne Yang. Take care, and I'll see you next time.